It's the chair. It's the leather chair. So, right, guys, Gremlins, listen up. We've been called out by some of our amazing gremlins, and you were right to do so. We've had some technical difficulties over the past couple of weeks.
We have.
One of our microphones broke, so we were sharing a mic. It's now been repaired and is back with us, so hopefully you will notice a dramatic improvement in the sound quality. We can only apologise, but we didn't want there to be any gaps in bringing you episodes, so...
Especially as last week I sounded like this, but this week I will increasingly sound like this.
Yeah, so we're back.
Because we have 2 mics.
We're back on top form, so yeah, thanks for calling us out. Continue to do it.
We also have really plush leather chairs that make squeaky noises. Bye!
Take me to the beach.
Chardonnay, Melanie.
Guys, that was obviously a clip from the very famous song by the All Saints called...
Pure Shores,
which featured in the 2000 movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio titled...
The Beach.
There you go. And in...
Wait. Based on a book called...
The Beach.
There we go.
My way of paying homage to the movie is I'm wearing the All Saints uniform. So I'm wearing a massive pair of combats and a crop top and a nose ring.
A really long puffer jacket.
A key 2000 look.
There are so many key 2000 looks to this movie. I don't know where to begin.
So we're going to talk about The Beach. Before we get into it, when we started to watch this movie, I'm not the biggest fan, so I didn't go into it thinking I'm going to have this wild ride. But as the film started to go underway, I got this real sense of nostalgia.
Yeah.
And it took me back to not necessarily the film, but when the film came out in school, I remember a lot of the girls were very much obsessed and excited about this movie. Was that to do with Leo?
Yes.
3 years after Titanic? Probably so. But also, it was a good mix of Leo, star power, and music. And
music's great. The soundtrack's better than the movie.
Yeah, and it was appealing. It was that time, when that whole traveller gap year type of thing was starting to happen. So people who were younger could see the potential of where they could go and the experience that they could have. So, yeah, for me, I felt very nostalgic about it. But I also did look back through the lens of 2021 and thought, essentially, this movie is about lots of privileged Westerners going to another country, a developing country, and taking over an island, growing illegal drugs, and living this debauched lifestyle.
Oh, you've just done
saying.
The synopsis. So that's going to be my rundown.
And that is it for today's woke news.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I think another thing about, just before I give the rundown on it, the kind of framing of this, the movie, is it was made, well, it must have been made in 1999 if it was released in 2000, or at least partly. And it's just before total saturation mobile phones, and quite a bit before everybody is into email. And certainly email was harder to access. There is one shot towards the end of the film where someone receives a photo and he's downloading it, and and it kind of goes bar by bar and reveals the photo over time.
That's what happens when you're trying to access the mainframe.
So all the focus and emphasis on trying to find something hidden and secret and fabled and mystical means a lot more in that context than it would today, where everything's been found, everything's on TripAdvisor, and you can book it using the computer that you hold in your hand.
Boom. Right, over to you.
So, Leonardo DiCaprio plays a 20-something American backpacker called Richard, who finds himself in Bangkok, Thailand, and we know early on that he's got a strong sense of adventure, an appetite for things that are off the beaten track, including drinking a shot of snake blood. It's quite a famous scene. He runs into a fellow traveller who is the crazed Robert Carlyle, who, shortly before he kills himself, shows him a secret map to a hidden beach that can only be accessed, it's basically inaccessible. And there's a community of people living there who are basically in the Garden of Eden. They found
hippies. Modern hippies.
Hippies. When he gets there, because he does get there, after meeting some people along the way and taking a French couple with him, when he gets there, he finds that this community is led by Sal, played by Tilda Swinton. Excellent piece of casting. She is superior, spooky, hippie.
And I do believe she is probably one of the most successful actors of all time, yet I think she goes very much under the radar. I would argue if I was to take a picture of her out into the street and say to somebody, an average person, do you know who this very androgynous looking lady is? They would say no. And I think that's a testament perhaps to her ability to morph into characters, or maybe I don't know. That's all I can think of.
She's very commanding, and she's almost insanely serene in this movie. That said, her character is horrendously underwritten. There is no sense of where she's coming from, why she wanted to be there, why all these other people, there's about 30 to 40 people living in this community, why they all decided that it would be good for her to be a leader, particularly when we see what she ends up doing. More of that later. At first, it's all great. They settle into this amazing community. They learn the ways of the people, including spearfishing and beach volleyball.
Oh, with the
cricket.
Swedes.
Yeah, and jumping in rivers.
Yeah,
and
there were lots of
streams.
kind of, I mean, I guess it speaks to the time, but there were lots of kind of obvious archetypes, like the Swedes. They're like three blonde guys who it was just very, and then there was obviously the one black guy on the island played by Patterson Joseph, now of Vigil fame. He's the captain on the new BBC One show about a submarine and crime happening under the waves.
And Peep Show. He was great in Peep
So
Show.
there was, there were lots of kind of obvious kind of archetypes, but potentially maybe they are the archetypes and the stereotypes that you do come across travelling. I mean, I didn't do the gap year thing in Thailand, although I've been there a few times. You have done that, but not in Thailand. It was in India.
India instead. But I think there are lots of parallels, and that's the thing that, revisiting this movie after 21 years, which is a long time, in those days, there was this real drive amongst travellers to find the real India or Thailand and kind of discover something that no one else had seen or been to, and go off the beaten path. So it's very accurate, and there's no way you could make this film now and have it resonate with audiences. But I don't think it did that well when it was released.
I think it was 100 and something million worldwide. I checked it out this morning. So I think for the time it was a relatively successful hit. But it's funny what you're sort of saying about people discover themselves. Is the key identifier that you've truly become enlightened wearing harem pants that have an elephant print on them?
Yeah.
Does that mean you've completely reached your final form?
That's when you've officially lost it and become a lost it, which is parlance for someone who's been in a country too long and adopted all the wrong things as well. Like, people locally don't wear those outfits. They're just on sale in all the tap markets for the tourists.
So let's get back to the movie. Where were we and your breakdown?
So, yes, they arrive in Eden. Everything's lovely. It's fun. It's funny as well. You get a sense of the characters. You see how their life functions, and you think it was worth the journey and the effort, because this is wonderful. Why would anyone not want to live here? Of course,
no live music, no electricity, no medical supplies, insects, monkeys, jungle rats.
Having to go through low season.
For anyone who's been to Thailand or that part of the world, when it's in low season, it's not a pretty picture.
Not much is going on. Richard's character has given a copy of the map to some surfer dudes that he met just before he left. Guess what happens? They turn up too. Their journey in to the beach isn't quite as successful. In fact, it ends quite tragically for all four of them. The community is already falling apart following things like a horrific shark attack, which is in some way brought about by Richard.
Hold the phone.
We're talking sharks. Over to Ryan for 9 hours.
I'm obsessed with sharks. You've got to know your enemy, guys. But is the shark some kind of crazy metaphor? Hear me out here. Hear me out.
Okay.
The shark, or discussion of the shark, appears several times throughout the film before we actually get to the shark attack, which is responsible for the death of several characters. Following me?
Yes.
So for me, is the shark a metaphor potentially for the reality that they're all trying to run away from? It's this beast that can literally take a bite out of their reality and bring them back to the real world. This kind of menacing sense of home, I guess, or this menacing sense of responsibility. I mean, that's what I take away from it. That's what this podcast is now, guys. We're taking it up a notch.
Yeah, and while we're on it, Jaws isn't really a movie about a shark, is it? It's about society.
I mean, it's just a giant phallic symbol from what I read.
So many theories. No, it's an interesting point. I'd say the shark represents what they're running to, and the underestimation they all have of upsetting the natural order of things. Because, of course, this is the commentary that's missing from the film is these bunch of privileged, relatively very privileged people turn up and settle and take what they want, and they don't seem to anticipate any ramifications or fallout from that act of latter-day colonialism and exploitation, basically.
And in the words of Jeff Goldblum, rape of the natural world.
Yeah, and chaos theory. Should we talk about that? Is that what you meant? Chaos theory? No? Too much Jurassic Park in one go?
No.
Oh, okay.
But essentially they are, I mean, I think you're led to believe during the film that the reason that the final shark attack happens is because the sharks are coming in because they're eating all the food, so the sharks don't have enough food to eat, and then Leo kills the baby shark, or the child of the mother shark, which again, close to Jaws, and then the mummy shark comes to get the sweets.
It does get called out. Do you remember that bit? After he's killed the shark, he comes back and he's crowing about it and entertaining everyone with the story. And then Bugs, who is Sal's boyfriend, their camp leader's boyfriend, just interrupts all the laughter in a really kind of stage English theatre actor voice and goes, "Strange thing, killing a shark, isn't it, Richard?" And the whole room goes silent.
He's wearing it sounds like those like a hunter with those big billowing white horse riding trousers. And
I'm here with bad news, Richard. The voice of morality. So yeah, I think for me, that attitude is summarised in the scene where Sal has to go back to the mainland to get some more rice. That's the only thing they travel back to the nearest island for. It's not even the mainland. And she takes Richard with him. Right before he leaves, Bugs, Sal's boyfriend, says, "Don't sleep with Sal." What do you think happens? Although it's totally initiated by Sal. She literally leaves dinner.
Let's just remind everyone that Sal is Tilda Swinton.
Yes, she leaves dinner and kind of says, "I'm going to go and play snooker. Here's the key to the room. Go and prepare for sex." And then we see that happen. And afterwards, Richard has a couple of questions. He's like, what's it going to be like when we get back to the island? This is going to be really awkward. I also have a girlfriend that I will later lie to about this whole thing. That's another story. And she kind of turns to him and says in this very serene, patronising way, I wrote this one down, "Bugs is my boyfriend, okay? My partner.
Okay.
You are someone I just had sex with. Is that clear? Now get some rest. I may wish to have sex again before breakfast in the morning."
Get to the clinic.
Yeah. And she may as well have said in that line, I want to take everything that I want. I want to have all my desires fulfilled. I do not want to have a conversation about the consequences of that. And I certainly do not want to be reminded what the impact and what the fallout.
Sounds like Donald Trump.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I don't think the movie's really pushing that moral commentary on the fact that this is a bad thing. I think it's just presenting that this is how we all thought at the time, and that was quite a radical, self-empowering thing to do. But today it comes across as really awfully self-centered.
Do we think that Danny Boyle set out to shine a light on these really disruptive, annoying, privileged characters? Or did he set out just to showcase a narrative and a story that at the time was becoming, more and more part of, the norm? People were starting to go backpacking and that kind of thing, particularly to Thailand. So, what do you think?
Thailand, like England.
Thailand. Oh, yeah, Thailand, yeah.
In Thailand.
I'm actually more focused on, I don't know if anyone can hear this, but I gesture quite a lot when I'm talking. And for some reason, I've got really clicky wrists.
Oh, right.
So when I'm talking, I wonder if anyone else can hear that.
Wrist day.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe the former, but then when Sal and Richard go back to the island, they do this. They take the moral high ground, and there's a montage of all the tourists in, I think it's Koh Samui or Koh Phangan. It's one of those islands, of all the tourists kind of like staggering into the water at night, throwing up, and the full moon parties and all the excess and kind of...
Did I mention that this film was responsible for a huge influx of tourists going to those particular beaches where it was filmed, which caused huge amounts of damage to the ecosystem and native species. So they had to close off those beaches for, I think it was a 10-year plan to try and save the wildlife, save the coral, save all different types of species and stuff. And I wonder, it's kind of, the reason I asked that earlier about what do we think Danny Boyle's point of view was, if his point of view was to try and showcase, this, the damage that we're doing to that part of the world, unintentionally, he's created a piece of content that's actually made that existentially far worse.
Well, I think,
result.
I think the studio, it's a real location, but they remodeled the beach, and they planted new palm trees and put grass at the back to make it more perfect than it already was. So you had all these tourists then turning up to discover this beach, and it wasn't even a fully natural place. It wasn't a kind of a scene in nature. It was a kind of semi-curated, created space that then got overrun and polluted and destroyed. And I think it's only just reopened this year. And of course, the tsunami.
Thanks, Danny Boyle.
Yeah, the tsunami. The tsunami in 2004 wiped out a lot of what had happened, and maybe to an extent reset things. But I don't think it stopped people visiting.
Any last thoughts? I've gone through my list. I haven't mentioned that I feel like, Leonardo DiCaprio's accent was a little bit annoying in this movie. I don't know why. Maybe it was just kind of that kind of angsty, entitled American teenager type vibe, but it just was a bit grating.
Yeah.
And it fell into the background a little bit.
I found as a period piece, it's wonderful just seeing what people wear. And do you remember guys all had those necklaces that were quite close around the neck?
Yep.
And then a kind of crew neck t-shirt as well. And long shorts,
spiky hair,
big print t-shirt, spiky hair. Also, a perennial obsession with weed and everything to do with weed being really cool.
And no one ever really got high in a bad way.
Yeah, it was always like, and I think at one point
no one was kind of chucking whiteys or kind of being having a bad. Everyone's just like smoking weed like it's cigarettes.
Someone said at the beginning, when you get to this beach, there's enough weed there to smoke every day for the rest of your life. And I'm thinking like, that sounds
a horrible life.
Torture. At least your life would be quite short, I guess.
You will. You're likely to drown or be eaten by a shark whilst high, swimming in the sea.
And they released those lanterns at one point. The ones, the big paper lanterns with the flame underneath that float up into the sky.
Yeah, you had me at lantern.
Yeah, okay, fine. So they do that, and seeing that, do you remember that after a couple of years of doing that, someone said, this is really bad for the environment.
Yep.
They land on the ground, animals eat them, they set fire to things. You're basically destroying the planet. It's not cool. And that's also immortalised in the film.
So in a nutshell, this movie provides us with the opportunity to move forward and look at all of the mistakes we made and how obnoxious we can be and have been going to other countries, and the bad choices people have made and the level of disrespect people have had, and also cults and all the things. Yeah, I'm not going to say that bit. I'm not going to do. In a nutshell,
this nutshell is massive.
I know this is the third time of me trying to surmise this film really quickly, but in a nutshell, I think it's just a movie to watch, and it takes you back to a certain point in time where the world was a little bit lighter, even though in reflection there was a lot of mistakes made. But I think it took us back to a time certainly where there was a bit more freedom, more sense of adventure. It's before 9/11, travelling was different. It was a different time for a young person. There's more positive outlook.
We didn't know as much, and we didn't know how much damage we were causing. So in that sense, it's actually quite encouraging that an audience today would not sympathise with any of these characters. I think even Danny Boyle has said since then he didn't like any of the characters in this movie. And the kind of climactic scene towards the end is 50% Lord of the Flies and then 50% the Russian roulette scene from The Deer Hunter. And the way it all falls apart, it happens very quickly and very, very clearly. You know that the dream is over and they all have to go back home, which is true of all of us in a way.
Can I play us out with a bit of Moby?
Yeah, as long as we talk over it.
From the beach.
Yeah.
What have we got here?
It's one of the other title tracks that's so iconic. Yeah.
Let's keep talking. Make sure we don't start talking about it. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks very much for listening, Gremlins.
How many handfuls for this one, all told?
I'm going to give this 2.
I'm going to give it 3. I'm going to give it 3 because it serves a
this
kind of...
is the one we should worry about. This sound effect is costing us thousands every second.
Should I have not said 3? It's too many. Yeah, 3 because it serves more of a kind of historical purpose than I expected it to. I expect this movie will be used to teach some courses, if not now, in the future, about sustainability and tourism and the impact that's had, because it's a really, really good case study for the mindset that we had all the way back in 1996 when the book was
you've
written.
Just given that away now, and Netflix are going to make a show on it. Well done. You should have written it down on a piece of paper and posted it to yourself.
Another great idea. Gone over to Netflix.
Okay, guys, so we'll catch you on the next one. We flipped it around this week, so we're doing the new movie, the old movie first, and then we're going to do the new movie next.
Well, welcome, Popcorn Gremlins.
All right.
Easy, how's it going?
Very, 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 very good. All the better for being here, and all the better being with our fellow Gremlins talking movies. Yeah, so this week's movie is a movie that's available now on Amazon Prime. For those of you that love streaming, you can rent it online there, and it's a movie called Undergods, released this year. Undergods, released this year, directed by Chino Moyo, and it was produced by the BFI. First of all, before we get going, do you know what Undergods means?
No, but I've just realised it's a play on the word underdogs. It's like an anagram of underdogs. That must be relevant.
Yeah. I guess it is. I don't actually think of that. I didn't think of the anagram side.
It's only just occurred to me. It's not in my notes.
So for all of you that may not be aware of what the term undergod actually means, the Collins Dictionary describes it or defines undergod as being a lower or inferior god, a subordinate deity, or a demigod. So think Hercules. So I have to be honest, with this movie, I didn't do a lot of reading prior to watching it. You
read the title.
Yeah. I was, as with all things that I kind of connect with, I connected with this film visually, the poster, which actually is quite romantic because in yesteryear, all you had to go off was a movie poster.
It's true.
So they really did invest a lot of time and thought into this poster, which worked because I watched the film. It's a poster that was, the illustrator was Max Loeffler. And for me, it really reminds me of the work of Eric Carle of Fantastic Planet fame, the amazing 1973 movie. So yeah, as I said, I didn't go into this movie with much knowledge. To me, Undergods just sounded cool. I think I read the first line of the synopsis and it said apocalypse and I was like, I'm in. But we started to watch the movie and we were maybe 15, 20 minutes in.
Upon watching
we were thinking movie, this is not an apocalyptic movie. No. This is an anthology movie. Now, with it being an anthology movie, it's really hard to synopsize, to break down in a really kind of clear way, or certainly not off the cuff. So, and also there wasn't many reviews online, which is quite interesting. So I've actually written some notes, and hopefully I can give you guys an overview of this film, or indeed what these many films mean. So, the film is set in a dystopian future Europe. As is everything these days, because it's so cheap to film in Eastern Europe. Everything's been shot in Budapest and everything now. We follow 5 story threads that all centre around a devastated city. Think Chernobyl, think Terminator 2 opening shot of Terminator 2. And we're led to think perhaps this was a result of a nuclear disaster. I mean, I can't think of anything else that would create that kind of landscape, an apocalyptic vision. It's very much in the style of the 1979 movie The Stalkers by Andrei Torjevsky. I can never pronounce his name.
Firstly, nice reference Gremlin, and secondly, nice pronunciation.
Thank you very much. The movie kicks off with 2 guys collecting dead bodies off the street in this affected zone. Through dialogue, we find out that they're actually collecting these bodies to be sold as meat on the open market.
Ew!
So we can take from that, there's obviously a problem with food shortages and so on. As each tale and each mini movie progresses, they all gradually bring us back to this devastated city. So the first movie takes us away from this original opening scene, and as the movie progresses, we eventually end up back there, and we find out more and more about this kind of desolated city. What's also quite interesting is that there's clearly, outside of this devastated piece of land, this once thriving city that's now a wasteland, the rest of the world seems to be continuing as normal. Everywhere seems, people have got phones, and, the sky is blue, and actually, no, the sky was grey throughout.
Yeah.
But that's the style choice.
Bluey grey.
But yeah, the rest of the world. So maybe this is just, we don't actually find out if this is just one city or if it's representative of a part of the world. But anyway, much of the world is continuing as normal. So these 4 movie threads. Oh, before I go on to that, the actors, I'd just like to name some of the people who feature in the movie. So Tanya Reynolds of Sex Education, the Netflix show, she's of that fame. There's a grey-haired guy from Into the Night.
I thought you were going to say from Game of Thrones.
No, who looks exactly like Glenn Close. I'm going to put a side-by-side on the Instagram channel. Please check it out. Bern Gorman from Pacific Rim.
Okay.
I would have thought you'd have known who Bern Gorman was. He's very much one of those British actors that's just in everything.
One of those
guys. Katie Dickie from Prometheus, and she was also the Queen in Game of Thrones, the one who was breastfeeding her, I would say, teenage son.
Elderly son.
She's also recently just starred in The Green Knight, which I keep calling The Green King.
Oh, cool.
So they're the main characters in that. So the 4 stories, really quickly. The first one is a stranger parading as a neighbour enters the home of a husband and wife, and it all goes nasty. All goes, I'm going to say bums up. Instead of...
Breasts up.
Say it now. Yeah, breasts up. There's a dodgy business guy who rips off the little guy, and gets his comeuppance. And then one of the slaves from the kind of dead zone wasteland I was talking about earlier escapes and finds his way back to the UK, to his wife, and finds that she's moved on. He's not all kind of there. And as I said, as the film progresses, we come back to these original 2 characters that kicked off the film, who are collecting bodies. The first 45 minutes was a bit trippy. I feel like someone was changing the channel.
Yeah, and changing the channel without our permission.
Rude.
How rude.
It's that pesky neighbour.
So yeah, I thought it took a while for the different universes to connect. And then when it did, it wasn't particularly satisfying or revealing. The thematic stuff that was going on was quite depressing. Like, hey, long-term relationships are no fun. Marriages are awful. And then also, I think that the difficulty for me was that the very first story was the most compelling one, and the one that felt more like a really, really good short story. This stranger knocks on the door. This couple aren't expecting anyone else to be living in this massive apartment building with them. Is he for real? Why does he have such a positive influence on the wife? And then it never really sucked me in again in the same way.
I think as storytelling goes, there was a lot more to cultivate in particularly that story that you're talking about. You almost didn't need this wider sci-fi arc narrative going on. I think this was a example. This is a piece of work. Sorry, this is an example of a piece of work by a director that's very heavily influenced by the sci-fi genre and all of those staple iconic movies like The Stalker, like Brazil, like 1984.
Yes, definitely 1984.
So he's kind of, it's his attempt, or whether that's intentional or unintentional, to create something within that space. And I think that's very evident straight off the bat. My thoughts: why is it with directors always depicting the future as bleak and sad and we're all going to die? Are we ever going to solve plastic in the oceans and, eat sustainably? And so it's a bit taxing in that sense. This is a note to Hollywood. Please start making some movies where we have a bit of a brighter future, because it's,
I think they do it because those directors want to show that they were right all along.
Yeah.
So when the world does collapse, they'll be like, I did say so in my movie, my anthology movie. You weren't listening.
So that was kind of a little bit taxing. I always talk about graphics, and I've obviously mentioned the poster, but yeah, from a
title, you're gonna have
whole
to
Gene
post-
Hackman situation again.
You're going to have
I'm
to share
obsessed
the
with
poster
graphics.
on our Instagram so that people can see
I
what
will
you're
do.
referring to.
So music-wise, it was a bit of a mixed bag, but it was a bag of goodies. There lots of synths, particularly in the beginning. Yeah, synth goodie. It reminded me, the synth part reminded me of Vangelis, although you say Vangelis.
Excuse me, do you speak Vangelis? Vangelis. And I thought, I either thought it was an individual and it's a group, or vice versa.
Yeah,
I was wrong about...
It's a group. And for all of you guys out there, they are the guys who produced all of the amazing synth tracks for the original Blade Runner and for Blade Runner 2049.
Which some would argue have not been beaten since that movie.
But to think we don't get paid.
I can't believe
what a waste. There was also another couple of tracks in there which I really liked, which were kind of, I'm going to put in this category of like 80s Scandinavian movies type music, which I thought was really cool. I'm going to play a little sample. Please don't sue us.
Oh, will you be singing this time?
I will not be singing.
Yeah.
See that kind of 80s,
It's probably
Scandinavian, European movie type vibe. Very cool.
It's like an ABBA demo. I wish our listeners could also see we were doing the exact same shoulder movement.
It's my Sound of the Summer. That song was by Thierry Dubert and it's called The Fifth Season. So go and find that on one of your... wherever you listen to your music. There's also another track in there by Nathan Flake, The Sky Was Pink, which took me right back to university days. It didn't really have a place. It kind of was a bit
in a good
weird.
Way?
No, going back to uni, was it a good thing?
Was it a good flashback or was it a difficult?
It was a great flashback. Hands in
good.
the air, raving, misbehaving. But yeah, it felt like maybe, I don't know, he was given this track like without any having to pay any royalties, so he's like, I'm going to use it. Kind of didn't fit in at all. And yeah, check out that Nathan Flake track and you'll see what I mean. The wardrobes and sets, yeah, I think you alluded to this earlier, all very grey, monotone, kind of mineral colour. Obviously that was deliberate to kind of make us feel sad and kind of further create this kind of bleak setting.
Unrelentingly.
But what it did do is it really made me feel like this was shot in the early noughties, styling and everything. So that was a bit jarring because it's meant to be set in the near future. Yeah, you raised a really good point about there being kind of inconsistency or the stories not fully connecting. I would totally agree with that. Plenty of dark moments, people being squished into silos and obviously people being enslaved and being eaten, which is, to quote you, ill. Pretty gross. Yeah, so this movie won't be in my future. Hopefully it will be in some of you guys, and we've kind of given you enough to...
I think the director will.
Enough of a tease to go and watch it.
I think the director will be in our futures. I could see the next step for him being actually a big budget sci-fi horror or action movie, because that's the type of trajectory this type of director often goes on. And if you want to watch a kind of slightly dark, quirky, murky British film and support the film industry in our little island, this is definitely one you should be checking out. And also if you want to drop that sort of highbrow thing into dinner party conversation.
If you're at a dinner party now, lockdown's opening up and we can go around people's houses and you want to throw a little cultural grenade in there. Hello, I'm speaking. Has anybody seen that amazing new movie by that young Spanish man? It was produced by the British Film Institute and it's called...
Undergods.
Undergods. And does anyone know what that means?
And basically, we're all doomed, like this planet is rotting. By the way, could you pass the balsamic vinaigrette, please?
Yeah. Guys, check it out if you like it, if you like what you've heard. And don't if you don't.
Well, how many handfuls?
I'm going to give it a solid 2.
Yeah, me too. Me too for 2.
Yeah. It's... I don't actually want to... It feels like I'm going on a downward kind of...
Spiral?
Slope here, yeah, with the movie. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. It is what it is. It's interesting. You know, at the centre of it is an interesting plot. It just needs to be expanded.
If we were writing a school report card, we would say, shows potential, must work harder.
Exactly. All right, then. On to
Cool.
the next one.
Yeah, see you there.
So that was it, guys. That was us talking about the new movie called Undergods. We like to bring you a broad mix here. Like to bring you some niche numbers. So
Some niche to go with your beach?
I don't get it. It's the third time he said this. Please tell me offline. Someone write in and tell me what he's talking about.
I'll write in.
Okay, so we'll see you on the back row. Remember, I like salty and he likes sweet. Got in there.
Sweet.
Bye.
Bye.